Eric, if you can just review all the...
Martin, are you ready to go?
Yes, I think we can start.
Okay.
It's a few minutes past 4 o'clock, so we can start and people can continue joining in. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Martin Guadia, one of the co-chairs, and we'll definitely get to introduce the rest of us as we go on. But just to start, let me first welcome everybody that is on the call. We very much appreciate your having made time to actually join this call. It's one of the normal strategy committee meetings of GACSA. And it's a special one in the sense that we have some very important issues we would like to deal with, but this has been organized within the scope and framework of all strategy committee meetings, in the sense that we want to look at a little bit of organizational issues related to governance and the operations, but we also want to dedicate some time to more thematic workings of GACSA, so that we're also looking at technically what are we doing and how are we moving within our core purpose of supporting the scaling up of climate smart agriculture. So the meeting has got three, I would say, key issues to deal with. We're looking at the transition issues, and many of you, I'm sure, are familiar that we have had to plan a transition period, which is between now and the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, to come back to exactly the period of that. And there are a few decisions we need to make in this regard, including the work plan and the budget. We also would like to look at some of the ongoing works, as I said, work in the action groups, as well as the many other activities that members and observers are actually doing in their own institutions and communities with regard to fostering or supporting promotion of climate smart agriculture. And lastly, we're also looking at the planning for the annual forum. So one of my colleagues is going to give a little bit more detail when we go through the agenda. But as I said, the main issue is to say welcome to this meeting. We hope that we can go through the agenda in the time that we have allocated. And indeed, as much as possible, we encourage you to come in and present your issues and comments. But also, I'm sure it's been mentioned that you can also write in your comments within this, especially those that are connecting through computers, internet. You can actually write in your comments, and those that will see will take time to deal with them. Otherwise, you can also deal with them thereafter. Having said that, let me invite one of the colleagues in the facilitation unit to run us through very quickly in terms of who is on the call, and then we'll come back to the agenda and look at the minutes of the last meeting. So is it Carl or?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think we have a number of people a lot of people have joined via the telephone. So I think that it would be best if we just went through a quick roll call. I'm going to unmute everyone, and please, once you're done, please mute yourself back up. Okay, so we'll go through a quick roll call. I'll start. I'm Kyle Poorman. I'm from the GACSA Facilitation Unit.
So hi, I'm Bernard Stordveen with the Yara International.
Hello, I'm Lindy Westbanda from Pretoria, South Africa.
Good morning. You have Martin.
Hello, it's Ernie. Hello, it's Ernie Shapes from GACSA.
It's Marijke from the Netherlands.
Astrid Agostini, FAO.
Mark Manis, U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Muriel Trouillet, France.
Miguel Narváez, Mexico.
This is Nina Histon. This is Nina Histon from DFID UK.
This is Cynthia Rosenzweig from Knowledge Action Group, AgMIP.
Alberto Millán, World Bank.
This is Allison Chowdhury-Chung from Cornell University.
This is Yana from CCAFS.
Federica Macaulay from the facilitation. I am here with Marwan and me.
Was that all? Okay, I think that was all. Thank you so very much. Thank you for taking the time.
This is Emmanuel Tocqueville from CIRAD as well.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Sorry, I am fucking. Sorry?
Roberto from Costa Rica.
Okay, I think.
I am.
Go ahead.
I am fucking Carril from Spain.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being on this call, and I'm going to turn it back over to Martin. Martin, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and once again, welcome, and thank you so much for everyone joining in. We do appreciate that we are on very different timelines. Some of you very early, some of you late in the day. So as I said, we'll try to be quite efficient with the time in terms of running through the agenda. Those of you connecting by computer, you have the agenda on the screen. So there are 5 agenda items apart from the opening session. We have managing the transition. Then we have annual forum preparations. The 4th agenda item is the action groups, and then we go to another business. So within the opening remarks, I will ask again one of our colleagues in the facilitation unit to run us through very, very quickly the minutes of the last strategy committee meeting, which I believe all of you have a copy, and where need be have managed to actually go through. We'll focus on the last page, which is the annex, that actually summarizes the decisions and actions agreed in the meeting. So is that Carl again taking us through that?
Yes, Martin, I will quickly take us through the minutes of the last strategic committee meeting. Let me just flip down to the decisions that were made. The last strategic committee meeting that we had we endorsed the revision of the GACSA vision and mission for the work plan. This document was circulated a number of times by Mark Manis, and that document has now been finalized. The GACSA Strategic Committee endorsed the Ad Hoc Finance Committee report, and that report has been augmented with documents that have been circulated on this call. The Strategic Committee asked for a comprehensive GACSA work plan and budget, and a transition work plan. And then it also asked for a 2 to 3 page generic profile of GACSA and its value to complement various donor interests. The Strategic Committee was also looking for a resource mobilization strategy, develop the strategy and necessary documents, and quote unquote friends of GACSA. The ad hoc team for the annual forum was reconstituted, and that team met. And it was acknowledged that GAP and GFAR would be partnering with GACSA on gender-related issues, and that partnership between GAP, GFAR, and GACSA, there was a side event that was put together for COP22. And that is the very brief overview of the decisions and actions that came out of the last strategic committee meeting. Are there any questions? Over.
Thank you, Carl. Are there any questions, comments on the minutes? As I said, if there is something pressing, please, you can also write in. So at this point in time, and assuming there are no questions, comments on the minutes, can I propose that we adopt the minutes as true record of the 5th Strategy Committee meeting? Second this. I want to believe that probably people are muted. Carla, is that?
People are muted, but can we hear a second?
Second, Kyle.
Okay, Martin, there is a second.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. As far as I know, is that people are muted, but as it is now, you can mute and unmute on your side with the icon in those on computers in the extreme left bottom corner. So when you have to speak, you can unmute that and get into the discussion. So thank you very much for that on the opening session, the agenda and also the minutes. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, me, to take us through the second agenda item, which is managing the transition period proposals and issues. Over to you, me.
Thank you very much, Martin, and good afternoon to all. Maybe as a nice segue into this session, just to say an update as to what is the situation right now of GACSA after the last strategic committee meeting and its decisions, is that following up on these decisions, The FU was streamlined as of the 1st of January. You will have seen probably from the newsletter that was issued in January that most of all the staff in the facilitation unit, which contract was coming to an end at the end of the year, was unfortunately not renewed, which leaves us in a situation where we have 3 members of the facilitation unit, 3 experts who are here because of secondments of different countries. Then it's Natsi, Federica Matteoli, and Kyle Foreman. There was one contract that was supposed to expire at the end of this year, which was the assistant position, but was at the end ended earlier because that person needed to find a more secure job. So it means that this will be. It means that in terms of the financial situation of the alliance, we have a bit more than had previously anticipated because the hard commitments were reduced. For this item, just to flag that there's one thing that is for decision, and it will come under 2A, which is the funding priorities and principles during the transition period. I will ask the person from the Finance Committee asking to present that document, which is document 6. If I could hand over, I think, to Martin de Groot. That this.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. So we can go through the document that was shared, which is the priorities and principles for funding and fundraising. We'll focus just to start on the funding principles, and then we'll move on to the fundraising as part 2B a little later on. So the main issues that we wanted to put forward to the Strategic Committee for decision today was an agreement on basic principles underlying the way that we've prioritized, and then a number of the priorities that we've discussed extensively. There's a lot of detail behind the work that was done by the Ad Hoc Finance Committee, but in the interest of time and efficiency for the Strategic Committee, we wanted to just boil it down to a more limited set of information. So to just walk through very quickly, the main principles that we applied in our deliberations were, given the fairly restrained finances that we have available to us for the coming months and up to a year, until we manage to get the fundraising moving. We recommended to reduce discretionary costs, so to minimize the printing as possible, give electronic distribution as much as possible, to reduce the travel expenses, again, trying to use our membership that's spread across the globe in representation of GACSA rather than having centralized people travel out. And I think regardless, that's a useful way to make the most of our membership. And then to make the most of our low-cost communications opportunities with webinars, video conferences, e-newsletters. And so really to make the most of our communications technologies and our membership as a way to reduce our costs. The places that we do feel are important to apply the limited funds that we have available to us is, number one, a standalone annual forum as a real anchor event for GACSA and a flagship for demonstrating the work that's done within the Alliance. Underpinning that, facilitating the functioning of the action groups. In this element, it's not a fixed allocation of funds yet, but going back to the action groups for them to review and prioritize where funding might be most effective and best leverage some of the work that's being done. We recognize that a lot of work is being done at no cost by the action groups, but we also recognize that some limited funding might help make the most and bring that to a greater scale. The third element that we would prioritize is the regional networks. This is something that's quite unique for GACSA to have a relationship with regional networks that we can help to strengthen and use to bring other members into the Alliance. And then, of course, we want to maintain visibility and outreach to our members through communications and visibility. So we see that that's a priority area to keep supporting going forward. And to keep the machine running overall, there's two pieces of human resources for the facilitation unit, particularly in the lead up to the annual forum, to have the support of a communications consultant who can help with those low-cost activities, to develop the messages, to develop the materials that we'd want to be carrying out, facilitate the webinars, and sort of to keep that as a priority element within the FU. And as mentioned by me in the lead-in, there was a program assistant that we were hoping to maintain that didn't work out. So we're looking for a new temporary assignment of a program assistant to keep the administration running effectively and efficiently in the facilitation unit. So really the main priorities are around keeping the knowledge portion, both on the finance, investment, and enabling environment and knowledge action groups going, which feed into a solid annual forum event and keep the message out there that GACSA is developing and delivering innovative solutions for climate smart agriculture. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you, Martin. Maybe before we open the floor for discussions, perhaps, Kyle, you could just give a quick overview of the financial situation so that people understand that the priorities that now amount to about $200,000, they are against which budget? And then we can take questions. Thank you, over.
Sure, me. I think the distributed finances of GACSA put the total budget that we have available to us at about $410,000. 150 of that 410 must be spent on the annual forum in 2017, 2018, and 2019. So that leaves us, let's say, working capital of about 260,000 non-annual forum money, and it looks as though we will spend, or at least the priorities look like, about 208,000 prioritized in this budget for 2017. Are there any questions? Over.
Thank you, Kyle. And I would just like as well to, in addition to thank France, Italy, and the US for giving in-kind support to this application unit through secondment. I just wanted to also highlight that the Netherlands and Ireland have given additional contributions at the end of last year, which allow us to have more money for the annual forum and as well a bit more for GACSA in general. But maybe just in a nutshell, to sum up what Kyle said, it means that for this year, my understanding is that we would have a budget of about $310K with an earmark of $50,000 for the annual forum. So that's what we have as a budget, more or less. And the proposal for the funding priorities was around $200,000, meaning that it would still be about $100,010 that's available. So just to give an idea we're talking about and whether people feel comfortable with the priorities or the amount that is being left as so I now open the floor for questions, either on the budget or on the funding priorities and principles.
This is Mark Manis. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, please go ahead.
Thank you. When you said the amount of money we have for this year, just to clarify, do you mean calendar year? Over.
Yes, I mean calendar year. Over. I'm sorry. I should say that some of this money can be used for other years as well, but I just wanted to say that even if the budget, the total budget is 410,000, because some of this money can only be spent on the annual forum in 2018 and 2019. Basically for 2017, we cannot look at something above 310,000. Over.
Hi, this is Martin. Can I come in again?
Of course, go ahead.
Just 2 points on what was presented. So the real questions that we're putting forward are whether there's agreements on the principles that we put forward, and whether there would be any funding priorities that we would want to add or take away from what's been presented. And one thing I want to underscore is, in terms of the priorities, is we haven't gone here to the detail of what specific initiatives within each element of this would be funded, but rather highlighted that these are areas that, if given the limited resources we have available, we want to make sure that some money is available and flows towards these. So on the chat, I see that there's a question on the regional networks. The actual functioning of the networks, how that funding could be prioritized, is to be discussed in the group between the facilitation unit and those members participating in the regional networks discussions on how that funding could be used and how that might be distributed amongst them. So we haven't gone to the level of detail of outlining that, but rather highlighted the need to allocate funds to those priorities. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin, for these clarifications. I wanted also to add that in the meantime, there's an informal agreement that, the facilitation unit of GACSA is going to go under the climate change division of the FAO, meaning that temporarily there may be some assistance functions that can be absorbed and some interim supervision responsibilities that could be absorbed, but this is really just on interim basis. And as well, that communications have been stressed as a big priority many times by members. It was felt for now that the existing facilitation unit can take on most of the work, but that as we approach the annual forum, there will be a need to hire a consultant, part-time or full-time basis, but for a short time. So there was provision made in the table that you see in document 6 for that. And as well, part-time, or well, not part-time, but an assistant would also help with a lot of the logistical support, as well as more corporate and institutional memory at some point. And what we have identified so far was a temporary assistance program at FAO, because it was deemed added value to have someone who's knowledgeable with all the procedures, financial administration and of FAO and the rules, because it's still financially managed by FAO. So at the cost that you see, which was $5,000 per month, but these cannot be part-time, it has to be full-time. This is less than what we used to have, at least in terms of cost for assistance support in the past. So we think that this could be a good cost-effective option. For the communication consultant, I see that there's a 28,000 that is identified for 7,000 USD a month. I'm not sure if that's something that people are looking at. And remember that the last strategic committee meeting had identified 16,000 as about the bulk amount for consultants, the communications consultants. So, I mean, these are just some considerations that I'm flagging here in terms of what the needs can be, and then how much are we willing to put forward for these costed activities. Perhaps the last thing I would like to point out is not to forget that probably a good item that we would like to prioritize based on the strategic committee meeting decision of last time, as well as on needs, would be that as soon as we have sufficient additional resources, contracting a coordinator would be a priority. Over.
Thank you, Mia. I think we have Cynthia would like to say something. Cynthia Rosenzweig, over.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting the co-leaders of the action groups, and Emmanuel Torpio and I are co-leading the Knowledge Action Group this year. And we would like to work with the Finance Committee to generate support in the second priority. You know, in particular, finding ways that we can establish synergies across the action groups. For example, you know, in the case study, for example, to be really providing and strengthening the knowledge base, the evidence base, et cetera. So just wanted to say that we look forward to working with the Finance Committee to see how we can help to go out to generate funds for the Knowledge Action Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. This is very useful, and it should be taken into account as well into our resource mobilization strategy. Absolutely.
Yeah. This is Martin.
Yes, please go ahead.
Actually, I was thinking in the same line that Cynthia is saying. Can we first add something in the principles in terms of encouraging members, those that would like to participate in taking up some of the costs, that they can actually come forward. And I'm talking about costs in the overall costs in the facilitation unit. This is all and above those that are already doing things within the action groups in terms of also in-kind contributions. So in summary, it's a principle that encourage members to come forward. Those that are willing or able would like to consider to support taking up some budget elements out of the FU budget. And then, of course, then facilitate that there's dialogue with them to see what they can take up in supporting either budget-wise or even just in kind, like printing documents or things like that. Over.
Before you go, I think Emmanuel raised his hand. So Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Kai. Just a comment that I wanted to make on the fact that action groups are the annual forum, you know, in order to have as many interesting activities as possible during the forum. But at the same time, it is acknowledged by all that a lot of work is being done by the action groups at no cost. So, among the priorities of the funding strategy, the facilitating of the functioning of the action groups appears not to be costly. It's just to be decided. So,
Emmanuel?
I'm sorry, Emmanuel, I'm sorry to stop you here. It's just on our side anyway, we cannot hear you well. I don't know about others, but I'm sorry, we couldn't at all get your point. Can you try again? I don't know.
Come closer to the microphone on the computer or use a headset.
I'm using a headset. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's really hard to hear.
I'm not sure what to do. I'm using the headset. I hear you well. Can you hear me now?
Can you come as close as possible to the microphone on the computer?
I'm using the headset.
Yeah, a headset would really help.
Sorry, I'm trying to change to the mic, to the other microphone. I'll talk later. Thanks.
That's a little bit better.
Emmanuel, maybe you can type your questions or comments in the webinar space. Maybe Alison can help you to identify where, and maybe Alison or Kyle can listen, can read your questions. I think it's the problem of microphone.
Okay, I'll write it.
Okay, great. So we'll have a placeholder for you. I don't know if there were other questions or comments that we can take in the meantime.
Yes, excuse me, it's Muriel from France.
Yes, Muriel.
Yes, I would like to make a point on the transition organization. So it would be very useful to have a clear overview of the tasks that are given to each members of the unit. It is something that we would like, because we haven't been well involved in the organization of this transition period, and it's really important for us to know what are the sharing of tasks between the members of the facilitating unit now and for the next months coming, and particularly until when the secondment will be in place. Over.
Thank you very much, Muriel. This is a very good point. We were hoping to have earlier confirmation by FAO as to whether there would be an option of some interim coordination responsibilities, but that doesn't seem to be forthcoming as such. But absolutely, I mean, our idea was to make sure that we would engage as well with the countries of secondment and then be able to formalize the interim kind of division of responsibilities. We certainly, for now, operating on the basis of the list of priority tasks that had been identified by the strategic committee last time, based on the recommendations from the finance committee. It was about a list, I think it was the item D of the decision note, that had about 10 core functions, with a lot on, of course, the functioning of the GACSA, the membership engagement, regional level, financial reporting. And what was the recommendation, further recommendation of the finance committee, was that they wouldn't be, in the meantime, while we would identify an interim coordinator or someone who could assume these functions, these tasks would be divided between the three people working in the facilitation unit. This has not yet been formalized. Consultations and discussions are still ongoing, but each one of the three have substantive responsibilities regarding to the core functions of that have been identified. And then among the three, there were also some coordination responsibilities identified to ensure a smooth transition. We still need to work on that, and we will aim to have a clear picture by the time of the next strategic committee physical meeting. And if we can have it earlier, then we will for sure communicate it in writing. Over.
Me, I'm going to throw it to Bernard, if you had your hand up. So go ahead, Bernard.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think it's absolutely right that the action groups are prioritized as second in your table of the list of priorities. But I would just like to, and of course we have already before discussed that the action groups will pretty much be driven by pro bono working hours and resources being put into the work by the participating organizations. But in terms of facilitating the work into delivering readily made products available to us and other stakeholders. I'd just like to ask the question if it's really realistic to do that on a zero budget if no funding would be available.
Thank you, Bernard. I believe that issue was actually quite discussed in the Finance Committee as to whether it was realistic at this time to have funding for any activity of the action groups other than giving visibility or communicating the activities being done, which would be under the fourth item of the funding priority. But I don't know if Martin, the group, do you want to answer this question? And perhaps address as well the one that was made as maybe putting that in the funding principle.
Sure, thanks, Me. This is Martin from Global Affairs Canada. Just a few points. Yeah, I mean, I think the question of funding, and as noted by Bernard, we certainly recognize the importance of the action groups. But we are also forced at the moment to live within our means. And so with very limited extra margin, we didn't want to recommend to a priori make the coffers bare by allocating funds up front. So for that reason, we were recommending to go back to the action groups to identify what the priorities would be and how much funding would be required, recognizing that the amount of funding currently available is quite limited. So there is a lot of work going on in each of the action groups as it stands on a pro bono basis, as Bernard mentioned. And we didn't feel, through the course of the discussion, that we could fairly recommend to allocate funds when we're quite limited. And that brings me to a point on the overall, the duration of the transition plan. Initially, the Ad Hoc Finance Committee was tasked with developing a transition plan for 6 months through till June. In discussion with the Ad Hoc Finance Committee, it was concluded that likely that wasn't the real end date of the transition, because the transition will have to continue until such time as we mobilize further funds, which is part of the second half of the discussion. And that's very clearly bound up with how we allocate the funds. We can't currently overdraw any accounts, so we need to maintain a prudent position until such time as we've managed to bring more funds in. So the duration of the transition plan currently is envisioned to go through till after the annual forum, likely through till the end of the year. As new funds become available, which hopefully they will through the engagement of the members, we'll be able to reevaluate priorities and perhaps layer on additional funds to different priorities, or deepen the engagement on the priorities we've set out as it stands. I think the addition of the principle suggested by Martin is very valuable, to invite the other members to contribute. And in a sense, that forms part of the resource mobilization strategy as well, that we seek the active engagement, both in kind and where possible, financial support from the members throughout. So it sort of cuts across the lines between our current funding principles, priority principles, and the fundraising principles. Again, I think there was a comment from what I could hear from Emmanuel's point on the action happening at a no-cost basis. And that was, again, something that was discussed by the Finance Committee, the recognition that our discussions as the Finance Committee are only to reflect on the resources that we have available. These are in fact dwarfed by the resources being applied by the membership on a no-cost basis. We haven't tried to account for that, but we recognize that there's a lot of resources being made available by all of you on the call and others who are participating in the action groups. Over.
Thank you, Martin. And as well, to just build on what you just said, the work plans of each action group is quite extensive. In what they had costed out to go into the GACSA work plan, there were not many activities that had a cost, except for mainly webinars or a bit of printing, and maybe there was one case study. And perhaps, as Cynthia said, the action groups can work further on identify what needs to be funded to bring it at a scale. But based on what had been provided so far, it was deemed that with the budget that we had or financial constraints, given that we have some money allocated to communications and visibility, as well on the regional level, which is still which is still meant to leverage some of the work of the action groups, that most of what had been identified by the action group so far in terms of additional needs was covered, because so much work is being done with in-kind contributions, and we need to put a value on that, but it was not necessarily affecting the transition period. Over. I don't know, Emmanuel, if you were able to send the question in writing, or if Kyle has it, and if it's different from what Martin had picked up, then we could hear it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is Emmanuel speaking. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good.
Very good.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm on the telephone line now. I've shifted to the other system. My microphone was having a problem. Well, I'm not sure. I've missed conversation for the last 10 or 15 minutes, so I don't know what has been said. My point was about the fact that a lot of work by the action groups is done at no cost. Yet, work is expected from the action groups to feed into the annual forum activities. And in the funding priorities, the support to the action groups appears not to be costed, and mentioned only if there is money available. So it's a bit playing a difficult game for the action groups, and it might be difficult to motivate people to do other things than the things which can be done at no cost. So, I mean, writing documents, producing policy briefs and things like that is possible. But when you talk about organizing webinars or workshops, then it comes at a cost. So it's a bit a concern that no money has been earmarked for that. Over.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for your contribution. And yes, maybe just to sum up the past 10 minutes, we recognize that a lot of activities of the action groups are ongoing and are done at no cost, thanks to the in-kind contributions of many members. And that what had been costed so far and what we had been provided with in terms of information were webinars, printing, or ways to give more visibility or disseminate the work of the action group, rather than the activity of itself of the action group. So that is captured under communications and visibility with the 20K. And it's in the funding principles where we say that we maximize low-cost communications like webinars and video conferences and things like that. So I just wanted to stress that we want to recognize that support to the work of the action groups, and it's linked more with communications and visibility. However, if the action group feels that there's a key activity that they would like to have accomplished by the time of the annual forum, and for which they lack money in terms of undertaking the activity in itself, then it would be great if we could have more information and flag it, because so far we haven't been advised of any such needs. Thank you. Over.
All right, thank you, Me. This is Emmanuel again. We'll discuss it with the other action groups and within the knowledge action group, and we'll let you know. Thanks.
Hello, this is Lindy with May I come now?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just worried about time management in terms of allocation of time for the different agenda line items. We are almost an hour into the call, and I feel we've only covered just two. So are we okay on time? Because the budget issues can go on forever, and we need to deliver some tangibles. Maybe moving on the annual event would help in terms of how we allocate resources as well. Over.
Thank you very much for being our timekeeper. Now, of course, I'm looking closely at the watch We still have 15 minutes for the transition period. I mean, the financial, the 2A was the big thing for discussion, but we can certainly move on to the resource mobilization if there are no other questions for the budget. Just to flag that 2 documents have been shared with you, one of which is a storytelling document about GACSA that is the first attempt to see kind of develop a narrative about what has been so far the achievements and the rationale behind the work of GACSA over the inception year and then moving forward, as well as the priorities and principles for fundraising. This will inform further work from the facilitation unit and the finance committee on how to raise or develop a resource mobilization strategy further. So for those, these were sent last week. If there are any comments on this, please express them now. Otherwise, you can always send them in writing to the facilitation unit.
This is Mark Manis.
Please go ahead.
May I go ahead?
Yes, please.
I agree with Lynn Dewey that it's time to move on, but having said that, I think we need a decision out of this call. We must have a decision, particularly on a standalone forum, 120,000, and the other items. I agree with everything else that's been said about wanting money for the action groups, but I think this total of 208 is about as far as we can go at the moment. And I want to move on, but I would like a decision now on the budget. So that will start things in motion, particularly on communication, regional networks, most importantly on the forum. So I support what was submitted by Martin and others, and I move to have this accepted so that we can proceed as proposed. Over.
Thank you, Mark. Muriel?
Hello. Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Please
you.
go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Mark. This is particularly on these items that I wanted to raise 2 points. First of all, on the action groups work, even if there isn't any budget allocated right now, we think there are some deliverables that would be very important. For example, the workshop on matrix. So that would be very interesting to have something, even if it's a proposal to have a back-to-back meeting, for example, for the next steering committee. So I think to give some space for the action groups to have a budget would be good. The second point was on the regional networks. This is really key to foster the regional alliance, and we think that the 20,000 USD is very low, and we would like to know whether it would be possible to take from the annual forum 20,000 USD to finance regional networks. Yes, over.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Federica, did you want to say anything? Okay. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Muriel, for your contributions. What I hear, we just had a comment from a member on the web saying that Cornell University would be able to do most of the webinars free, and we could use the solution. So that is a very appreciated contribution from Cornell. Thank you very much. and will be taken into account, meaning that if that takes off some costs from the communications and visibility that could be used otherwise, there could be a way to put more flexibility so that we have as well some support to the regional networks if people consider that it should be increased from what is proposed now. I mean, the annual forum, the 120K is based on what it cost last time. So I don't know what kind of trade-off if we lower the budget, but I guess my question right now would be to say if to put the proposal that was made by the Finance Committee to the membership and see if you can approve in principle. There's no strong objection, but we take into account the comments that were made on priorities that you feel are important.
I'd just like to say that we had a couple in the chat box. Ernie Shea and Eric Palmier seconded Mark Manis's motion. Over.
Okay, thank you. If I hear no opposition.
This is Astrid Agostini, SAO.
Yes, Astrid.
Just a brief question related to this point, because in terms of the funding for the regional networks, maybe you could just be a bit more specific about it, because what's put in the document is two different things. One is leveraging dispersed membership, which presumably would include potentially bringing representatives from regional networks, for instance, to the annual forum. And then another point, which is to foster cooperation. Given our incredibly limited funding situation, I don't think in GACSA we're in a position at the moment where we can fund other organizations. So my question would just be just to see that it's the specific emphasis of the funding is really about making sure that the kind of links are established. But maybe that doesn't need more. I would hope possibly even a bit less than is actually budgeted here at the moment. And I would second the point made by Mark Manis. The annual forum really is kind of the key event for GACSA as its organization. So there, I would be hesitant to withdraw funding from that, and in order to support other activities which may also be very worthwhile, but may not be as essential for GACSA to continue.
Thank you, Astrid. I'd like as well to remind the members that the funding priorities are not like fenced, in the sense that there are a lot of synergies between them. So, but I feel that I hear from the comments that most of them have been identified as priority areas that the members feel. So again, our proposal to you is that the proposal that has been put forward, or the recommendation that has been put forward by the Finance Committee, be adopted in principle, in the sense that we take as well into account the comments that we expressed today, in terms of when it comes more to the details of spending later on. And we've had a few members now supporting. We've seen as well on the web a few that said as well they supported this recommendation. So at this point, to move forward, I'd like to know if there are any objections.
This is Mark Manis. I appreciate Francis' point. And of course, I still support the budget as proposed, but maybe we could stipulate that as more money comes in, to make that explicit, that we can and will revisit items that maybe aren't funded the way we would like. And this is just to keep us going, but it's not to be the ceiling. So all of those additional thoughts should be kept in mind as we move toward finding more funds. Over.
Thank you. We can add that certainly in the column of how much as more funding, and to say as well that whatever is under communications and visibility can be as well used for work at the regional level, which could also be with any of the action groups. And just to respond to Astrid, Just to let you know that when we talk about cooperating with regional CSA alliances, or we're not talking about giving money to other organizations, just to see how they can actually leverage work at the regional level, the regional alliances, given that they have quite a platform and are inclusive as well. So it's just trying to bring more synergies among existing efforts. And we've seen already one example that happened in North America, where the private sector worked with, through the World Business Council, worked with the North America Alliance on CSA. So we hope that, you know, these are useful synergies that can be built. And that was anyway, that was at no cost. Okay, so I feel that we need to move forward, and we only have 4 minutes left before we go to a bit more into now the substantive discussion. So on resource mobilization, again, there were 2 documents that were circulated. If people have immediate reaction or suggestions or comments, we would be pleased to take them now. Otherwise, there's always time to do it afterwards in writing or through a call with any of the members of the facilitation unit. So I would like now to open the floor to either the storytelling document about GACSA, document 5, or the funding, the fundraising principles and priorities in document 6.
We did.
Hi, Mead.
Go ahead, Martin.
Hi. Just 2 points to highlight on the fundraising principles. The idea really is to try to differentiate between, to leverage our membership, as was noted by the other Martin earlier, to try to use our membership as much as possible to try to access fundraising possibilities, and to differentiate across scales. So fundraising can be around specific products, specific events, or for the facilitation unit as a whole, the alliance as a whole, to try to capture the range of opportunities and the range of capacities of various kinds of donors. Because I think at this point we want to reach out and make the most of who we are, and try to expand that as well to bring other people in who might have deeper or less deep pockets who might be able to contribute. That's the main idea behind it.
Thanks, Martin. Very useful.
We had a hand raised here. Jay Carell. I may have butchered that, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kyle, were you giving the floor to a participant?
Yes, we had a hand raised. I'm sorry, Jay Carell.
Okay.
Oh.
Who asked for the floor?
Yes, who asked for the floor? But if you have your speak up if you can. Over. Okay, we'll give it back to me.
Me, this is Mark Manis.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Martin de Groot. This is well laid out. I think it's a good strategy. The only question I have is on the fundraising principle, bullet 3, establish roles and responsibilities. Perhaps you could share with us the status of that and how we can flesh that out, because I think that's critical. Just as Cynthia Rogenzweig volunteered at the beginning of the call, to lay out those roles and responsibility to get this off the ground so we can have more funding. So any thoughts on how you can flesh that out, Martin, and share with the group would be welcome. Over.
Thanks, Mark. And I have to say that the resource mobilization is still a work in progress. I think we're to some extent we're opportunistic as well in capturing the opportunities, and so we want to lay responsibility before all of the membership. But I think in terms of leading the charge, the facilitation unit has done great work on developing the storytelling document and an overall strategy that's been discussed by the finance committee. So I think preparing some of those messages will be, and sort of and enhancing those documents will sit with the facilitation unit. I think we would look to our finance committee members to explore how to better nuance or how to get those messages a bit more tweaked, and we would invite any other members of the strategic committee to engage on that. I think through the exposure and the connections that our co-chairs have, we would be looking to them to try to leverage that. They're already doing a great job in terms of building the profile and building the network of GACSA, but we would look to the co-chairs to add into that mix some donor approaches to get funding in. And then we would push towards the membership to identify where they may be able to contribute in kind or in cash. And as mentioned earlier, with Cornell having just offered to help with defray the costs of the webinars, that's, I think, a good example of how we might be able to do that. So the responsibility lies with us all, but we can put something together that's a little bit more explicit, but we'd welcome your comments and input on that.
Thank you, Martin. We're out of time for now. I'm sorry. So if there's an immediate or urgent question that someone would like to ask Martin as the convener of the Finance Committee on the fundraising principles, please do so now. Otherwise, do it in writing afterwards.
Hello, this is Cynthia Rosenzweig from the Knowledge Action Group. Just in the terms of reference roles and responsibilities, if perhaps it's there, but to strengthen the role of the action groups being actively and explicitly engaged in developing the messages and strategies for fundraising for their, of course, particular activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very good point, given that a lot of the substance and the added value of GACSA is done a lot through the action groups. So this can be kept in mind for the resource mobilization strategy that is being developed. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to close this agenda with having heard no objection to the proposal or recommendation by the Finance Committee on the funding priorities and principles. I will take it as approved, bearing in mind that all the comments that were made will be taken into account and reflected in the minutes of this meeting, and as well that this is not set in stone for the whole year, in the sense that we have opportunities like the next strategic committee physical meeting to make any required adjustments. But at least it gives effective guidance as to how at least to start proceeding and planning. Especially, I think I have not heard clear objections about planning the annual forum. And it's a nice segue to our next item, which is the annual forum. So based on the last decision of the 5, with the World Bank, Mark Sadler being the facilitator, and I would like to give the floor to either Toby or Kyle to present what is the proposal for which we would like a decision today and discuss. So please, Toby or Kyle.
Mark might be on the phone too. I don't know if Mark wants to do it. I'm not sure.
Ah, yes, if Mark Sadler is on the phone, please. Over. Okay, it looks like Mark Sadler is not on the phone. Toby or Kyle, are you, Toby, are you on the phone?
It looks like Toby's not on the phone, so let me play the part of Mark and Toby. The annual forum task team has a recommendation for the strategic committee. They have recommended that there be a standalone annual forum. The timing of the annual forum, they imagine, would be in mid-September to mid-October 2017. The team has said that the format of the annual forum should be much like it was last year, a 3 to 4 day event, a 2-day core event.
Hi, Kyle.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry, everybody. I was actually on the phone, but our firewall really doesn't like this platform. Anyway, we're back. So should I just pick it up, Kyle?
Yes, you should. Over.
Okay. Okay, so we've had a number of virtual meetings and quite a lot of backwards and forwards with the group in writing, which leads us to a number of recommendations for the strategic committee to consider. I think it's probably useful just to keep it to the document that's already been submitted. I think it's document 7 as a reference. So on timing, pushing it out to mid-September, mid-October, so before COP and after the summer holiday. Clearly, you don't want to hold it during the summer period. In Europe, that means very low attendance. And you want to get it sufficiently before the COP. On the format, the suggestion, recommendation is that we actually have a standalone. It's very difficult to get people's time for extended periods of time. We had a long and in-depth discussion on the advantages of piggybacking with another event, but then that does mean that you either are in competition with that event and or you're expecting attendees to give up a whole week, which for a lot of people is just not really possible. 2 core days. I think I'm now picking up where Kyle left off. Something space in there. I mean, pretty much following the same format as last year, but taking into account the feedback that we all received. A lot of people were very positive about the field trip. You know, subtext on that is it's very difficult to organise them, and it's quite a heavy lift. But there seems to be quite a lot of demand for that. On the level of the event, we suggest that this remains a technical one, like last year. We're not suggesting that high level is not important, but we think that we should be strategic in actually having a GACSA event, high level event, at another venue where the high level people will actually already be. That enables us to strategically ensure that we get a lot of them in the room. Otherwise, this is going to be a question at this stage about how many high level will want to attend, and if they do, they will only want to attend because we have something very specific to launch or show. We didn't feel that we were quite in that position at the moment. Location and venue. I mean, Rome worked fine last time. There's a lot of support for that. We're incredibly grateful to FAO for their hosting and for their assistance and all the wonderful things they were enabled to do for us last year. There is a suggestion that maybe no one's yet stepped forward. None of the members have stepped forward and offered to host, but maybe we should make a very specific request once again if any of the members would like to host. The details of what hosting would mean, I think, is dependent on the offer. So to the degree to which a host would want to get engaged, sponsor, etc., etc. So I think we should be flexible and pragmatic about that, but open a call for a specific amount of time should anyone wish to volunteer to host. On the agenda, we're currently working on that. We're basically taking the same sort of structure that we had last time, whilst taking into account some of the feedback that was provided post the event. And the next steps are, well, we need some form of decision from the strategic committee to say that we're heading in the right direction. And then we really need to know when the next strategic committee meeting is, because we do need to physically get in the room with the team to get a lot of things ironed out. Over to you, me, and Kyle, if there's something missing.
Thanks, Mark. No, that was very comprehensive, but maybe just to say that there have been two very initial and informal expressions of interest in terms of hosting the annual forum. So we're discussing, in terms of we need to provide some information and see whether these expressions of interest are actually solid ones, and then give for consideration to the annual forum attaching. So that's one piece of information. And also say that for the next strategic committee meeting, as well as the annual forum tasking meeting, we thought we could try to use the opportunity as well as the workshop on metrics to have all these three done at the same time and limit the need for travel and actually optimize participation. I'm not sure where are the discussions on the workshop on metrics, but we should try to make them all coincide. Kyle, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, those were perfect summaries. Over.
Well, in this case, I'd like to open the floor for questions or discussions.
Hello, this is Muriel from France.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We have two remarks. First one is a question. Do you have already identified the main theme and the principles for the meeting of the forum? And the second is just a request. It would like to, whether it's in Rome, we would like to avoid the week of the CSS because it's really physically it's really difficult to be at the same time in both meetings. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Just on the second point, yes, it's in the note that it would be before the CFS meeting taking place. And that's why I think it was the period identified was until mid-October, given that the COP is in November. Mark, I don't know if you can respond to the question of a theme for the annual forum.
Sorry, excuse me.
Sorry, the annual forum task team is open to everyone, has been going since the previous year. I'm not quite sure what further I could say.
No, I don't know if it was the team, the question, or the theme, if the, like in the sense of the objectives of the like if there's a special subject or like a title for the annual forum.
Yeah, at this stage it's very much following last year's, which is demonstrating partnerships in action. But over to everyone else, the idea is to, be showing value add to the members, enabling them to showcase what they're doing and how things are moving forwards in this area.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So what I gather is at this point, again, we would build it more like on the last annual forum format, which is taking stock and showing achievements of the members in GACSA and not focusing on specific issue or aspect at this time. I have a question as well. Oh, yes. Yes.
This is Martin here.
Yeah.
Just a quick point to the team, and this is with regard to their agenda. In the same way, and I do appreciate the fact that the action groups are working and will be developing some of the content for that. In the same way, do you think it could help to send a general invite to members and various stakeholders that those that have got issues within the context of the theme can actually prepare to share that in the annual forum, if there's anything like that, then they can submit and it can be considered working with them, but then they prepare something that can be shared. I'm looking at how to get a lot more on the ground experiences, especially from farmer organizations, farmer associations. Because if that comes up from Africa side, we can help to mobilize some of the farmer associations, farm organizations to actually prepare some input to share.
Yes, Martin, that's what we did last time. And as soon as we've sorted out that, when and where this is actually going to happen, and that this is a technical event, then the team would do exactly that. That's what we did last time. But the theme needs to be agreed, because otherwise you'll end up with an enormous, even if you tell people what the theme is and what the structure is, people will still submit whatever they want to, but at least then there's a clear criteria for deciding what is on the table. If we don't, until such time as we're clear on all those other pieces, you can't go out with membership. But certainly that would be the intention. Over.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Mark Manis.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question for Mark Sadler and others. Well, first of all, support this proposal. But Mark, do you have a sense of when we need to nail down the location? Because then we could get specific in terms of dates and so on. Do you have a thought about when you would like to see that decision decided? Over.
Mark, no later than the end of March.
Okay, thank you. That's useful indication. Plus, we're just going to make sure here that we make all the arrangements to at least have the backup option in Rome and identify when would be the best date in terms of having available rooms here, so that we can always rely on that option. I had also a question for you, Mark, about the high-level segment. Was there anything that was kind of flagged as what would be the best opportunity to have high-level people already meeting? Did you feel that it should be COP23 or in New York or another meeting?
I think so the decision just needs to be made. The FU can come up with the organisation. It says here they can come up with what are the potential events. My personal feedback is that given this is mainly about agriculture, that holding it at COP, and you may well hold something at COP, but most ministers of agriculture, high-level agricultural people, are not actually at COP. So therefore, something like CFS, something that's very clearly agriculturally based, would invariably be the best option. Over.
Okay, thank you. That's really useful guidance. So just to clarify again, we just have 3 minutes on this item, but that the proposal that is submitted for decision today has been circulated in document 7, and it's mainly to agree that it will be a standalone annual forum, that the time frame will be in the fall between mid-September and mid-October, and that it would be a technical event, high level, with the understanding that maybe a high level segment can be attached, or event can be attached to an existing event. And the deadline would be end of March to know about the location. Otherwise, a fallback option is Rome like last time. Can the strategic committee agree with this proposal? And I mean, I'm submitting it on a no objection basis, so only if someone has an objection, you can express it now. Okay, I hear no objections. So I think that thank you very much to Mark and the team of the annual forum to having advanced on this, and we can now advance even more in the preparations, knowing that we have agreed on these parameters. So I will now turn to.
Excuse me.
Is there someone who?
Yeah, sorry. This is Cynthia Rosenzweig, and if Emmanuel is on the phone, he can speak to this even more. I think it's fine. It's I understand that it's good to have the annual forum on its own. The Knowledge Action Group is working on a climate smart agriculture conference, the one that had been held in Montpellier, I think 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, whatever. And just to say that we do hope that there can be lots of interactions between, of course, the larger GACSA and the Knowledge Action Group forum, so that even if they're separated, they can still be seen to be very synergistic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very good point. And I think that even though there's a recognition and a recommendation made that the annual forum should be a standalone event for practicalities and to optimize the participation, that it should be part of their events when you have synergies with different action groups to keep the momentum. And you flagged one. I don't know if, are you talking the one that the Knowledge Action Group is working on, the conference? Is it the fourth global conference?
Yes, if Emmanuel is still on, he is. He could really bring this group up to date on the details. But it is to be planned to be held in Africa, I believe, in November of 2017. But Emmanuel is the one to really bring us up to date.
Yes, I'm on the line. This is Emmanuel. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think Martin can tell us more about that. But yes, we had initially the idea of suggesting that the annual forum be organized together with the CSA conference in Johannesburg. But I mean, since the decision has been taken now that it should be a standalone event, I think the decision has been taken already. So what can I say?
Yes, it's just to encourage synergies between the two events. And so, one is really being able to, really reference the other, of course, so that, so that we can really maximize synergies across both.
Yeah, maybe I can say something.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that the decision has not necessarily been taken. We're now putting it for decision. But I want to say that this has been considered by the annual forum task team, the various events that are taking place throughout the year, including that conference. And given the length of that conference, that was 2.5 days, it was judged that it would not be for the benefit of either the science conference or the annual forum to hold them back to back. It doesn't mean that one cannot reinforce the other, and actually it should. I mean, that's where there was also a list of events that was circulated, and we don't have time to discuss it at this call. It would be most useful at the next meeting, but we should definitely see how we can feed into the science conference and have a GACSA presence there. Over.
Yeah, maybe this is Martin. I can say something quickly. Actually, I've raised the point what Emmanuel is talking about in terms of co-convening or bringing back-to-back these two events. But of course, one of the other things we've considered is that if it goes that they are separated, then the point essentially I think is making on ensuring that the still connection is important. I think many of you may be aware that the link between the Global Science Conference and the GACSA is something that has been on for in the past. And GACSA was very present in the Montpellier conference, which was the third one. And this is the fourth one that is going to happen in Johannesburg in November. And actually, a lot of the information in terms of public dissemination is going to go out this week. So whichever way we take, if we are saying separately, then the underlying issue is how do we connect thematically that there's a connection and we can mutually benefit the two conferences, because there's a lot of linkages in the issues, in the themes, and also in the participants. Over.
Thank you, Martin and Manuel, for providing this clarification and information. Are there any other comments on this annual forum recommendation? And based on what has been expressed so far, do people feel comfortable with what has been recommended by the annual forum task team? Thank you. We will reflect all the comments that were made in the minutes, and that will be taken into account in terms of making sure that there's a continuity among various events on climate smart agriculture. So I will now turn to Martin for the item 4, action groups, regional linkages, and task teams.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Me. This is the 4th agenda item, and I would not waste any time except to say this is equally important part of the strategy meeting. And what we would like to do is to give chance to the action groups. We'll also give chance to 2 other groups, which is the regional linkages and also the task team on the membership, to share very briefly what they are doing thematically. We have had some discussions that relate to organization aspects. At this time, we want to look at what you are doing in the action groups and also a knowledge action group and the membership in the regional linkages group and also the membership task team. So at this point in time, let me invite okay, before I do that, let me mention that many of you are aware that David Harrod, who was convening together with Richard in Tanzania, convening the investment action group, has changed responsibilities in his work, and in his new assignment is not able to continue that convening responsibility. So we are working with him and other members in the action group to see if we can facilitate somebody else to take up that responsibility, and that work is underway as I speak. But I think Tobias or Carl is going to say something a little bit on the thematic side in terms of the investments action group. So having said that, let me invite, I suppose it's Emanuela that is going to talk about the knowledge action group. Tobias or Kerr will talk about investments, and Mark Manas will talk about the enabling environment action group. So shall we start with the knowledge action group?
Yes, this is Emmanuel speaking. Thank you, Martin. I'll comment a few points that we have for the knowledge action group. First, what I would like to say is that since the meeting we had on 17th January this year, the new co-convener of the Knowledge Action Group is Cynthia Rosenzweig, who is online today, and she has replaced Federica Matteoli. And we thank Federica Matteoli very much for the past work. So Cynthia and me now, we are together co-conveners. We have circulated a list of Knowledge Action Group products for 2017. A number of products were already identified last year, and we have new contributions by the European Agroforestry Federation with 4 practices briefs on agroforestry, by CABI, a practice brief on climate smart pest management, and by FAO, a brochure on CSA communication for extensionists, and a policy brief on rural agricultural service for CSA. So these are the new products we have put in our list of products for 2017, on top of the existing ones. Progress has been achieved with the Investment Action Group on the organization of the CSA Metrics workshop. We have talked about this already today. So we're happy about the organization of this workshop, though we hope it's not going to take us too much time traveling, as we said before, to different places. The point we made in the last meeting we had with the Investment Action Group is that it should not be a meeting looking at only investment-related metrics, but also all metrics and indicators linked to biophysical context and to the enabling environment context of CSA. You know, how does CSA contribute to the sustainable development goals? How to provide investors with clear measurements of CSA in terms of resilience, adaptation, mitigation, food security, etc. So we are in the process of discussing this with the Investment Action Group, and we're confident that there will be a nice program for this workshop. Next, we have made some progress on organizing the CSA 2017 conference in Johannesburg, which Martin was talking about just a few minutes ago. And we've played our role in the organizing committees of this conference. And as Martin said, there will be information circulated next week about this conference. We are working on an article on CSA research gaps, which hopefully will be ready for the CSA conference of Johannesburg. And we are excited about being able to provide the CSA community with a sort of state of the art of where the research gaps still, where there are still some research gaps to be addressed. Finally, we would like to make a point that we encourage all Knowledge Action Group and all GACSA members, by the way, to prepare submissions for the CSA conference of Johannesburg. The more people from GACSA talk during the conference, the better. Over to you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. So is there probably opportunity for just 2 comments, questions to the Knowledge Action Group? Any question, comment?
Hello, this is Muriel from France. Yes. We would like to be in. Yes, we would like to be in the mailing list of this group as the country.
Okay, Muriel, will do.
Okay, thank you. Another comment, question? If there's nothing.
I'm sorry, I was cut off for a while.
Okay, go ahead, Lindiwe.
It's Lindiwe, and I'm sorry I was cut for a while. I've just managed to reconnect. So I'll follow up by email if there are issues I've missed out of.
Okay, thank you, Lindiwe. There will also be minutes, and I think it's being recorded. You can also go through that. So can we get Tobias or Carl to give us very briefly on the Investment Action Group?
This is Kyle. I don't know if Alberto from the World Bank is on. Alberto, are you on? Do you have anything to say?
Hi, Kyle. Yes, I'm on. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, just to second what Emmanuel raised before, we had a call last week within all the action groups, basically. It was agreed that during this metrics workshop, the Knowledge Action Group and the Investment Action Group would be inviting the Enabling Environment Action Group to come with their inputs and available contributions. So it will be a joint initiative between the 3 action groups, and further details need to be discussed according to decide whether it will be a standalone or piggyback in another event, and further details. But that's what we agreed so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. And I'll just add on that we had a call in January as well with the Investment Action Group, which the Facilitation Unit and the World Bank co-convened on an interim basis. But we are looking for, we are looking for another another convener. So I just echo what Martin said. And we were, for the meeting between the metrics workshop, we were looking at the next physical meeting of the strategic committee. That's all I have. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Any question, comments on the investment action group?
I had a question. This is me, Ron. I had a question. I wanted to know if you flagged this. I just wanted to clarify that this workshop will be is planning to be held without necessity for funds, right?
Yeah, I think there's somebody whose line is not muted. So if please you can mute your line. I missed, at least on my side, missed your last part of the question. You just quickly repeat.
Yes, I was just wondering if planning for this workshop on metrics, which seems very interesting, and it's now bringing the 3 action groups, that planning was not dependent on any additional resources, right?
That's right, me. Over.
Okay, okay. I think that is clear.
Okay.
Another question, comments?
And when, well, sorry, I don't want to take the space of anyone else, but I think that the next strategic committee meeting will be planned more when you think you will be ready for this workshop. So do you have a sense of when you think that it would be ready to be held?
Well, this is Kyle. We have the concept note, and in the concept note, we're looking for a select team of people to be part of the workshop, and we were targeting in the spring, springtime. So we believe we can be ready for the next strategic. We can be ready, right, Alberto?
Yeah, we just need to decide who will be joining, what will be the topics, and then whether it will be a standalone or a piggyback event. But yeah, we should be in shape to do so.
Okay, thank you. I suppose, Carl, it may be useful to share widely that concept note for information, but also to see those that may be willing to participate within the context of the action group. If there's no other comment,
this is Bernard from Yara. Just very briefly, even though I'm not co-chairing any action group, is it possible to be looped in on the work being done on metrics?
This is Kyle. Yes, Bernard, we will loop you in. Over.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Shall we go to the enabling environment, Mark Manes?
Yes, thank you, Martin. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
And your question.
So we circulated could you please mute your phone? I'm getting parallel conversations here. All right, we submitted a enabling environment action group framework, and
just 1 minute, Mark. Mark, just 1 minute.
Sure.
There is somebody whose line is still open. Could you please check? Those who are on phone or on computer, please check and ensure that you are muted.
Mark, I'm going to mute everyone, and then you unmute yourself, okay?
Okay.
Mark, you need to unmute yourself now. Oh, God. Okay, you're unmuted.
Okay, sorry. Technologically challenged, but let me proceed. So we have this framework for the action group, EEHE, and what we're trying to do is to develop some context here for the individual 11+ case studies. So we've created this framework that bears in mind the relationship of all of our stakeholder groups in conjunction with looking at climate smart agriculture from a policy and institution perspective. We feel that this framework can inform members of areas this is Mark Manis. We're looking into a framework that will help inform where there are areas on policy that aren't covered, and other areas where there are also efforts underway. And that could be a lens in which we look through the new case studies as well as the previous 6 from last year. We also identified a number of emerging issues, which I'll refer you to the document itself. So in a nutshell, we have these individual standalone activities. We wanted to look at them through this lens of a framework, and that the framework could have value in coordinating work, and furthermore, the framework could inform and guide us in a direction as we begin to prepare for the annual forum and what we would want to do in the Enabling Environment Action Group. We welcome others to engage, and we welcome your input on the document itself. So in the spirit of keeping this brief, let me pause, see if there are any questions or comments. Over.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions, comments to Mark's presentation?
This is Cynthia Rosenzweig. So I think from the Knowledge Action Group point of view, we're very interested in the new case studies. Well, first of all, the framework in general, and seeing how we can contribute to that and be part of that, and have again interactions and synergies. And then first on the framework, and then second, as new case studies are getting going, to see how Knowledge Action Group members could contribute.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think that is worth exploring further, particularly when all 3 groups get together, as already explained. So we look forward to that with the Knowledge Group and also the Investment Group. Over.
Thank you. Can we take one more question or comment on the enabling environment?
Hi, Martin. This is DBC with SIAT. Hi, Mark. So at the last meeting, SIAT indicated its willingness to join the Enabling Environment Action Group, but I've also written to Kyle to join the Strategic Committee. In my previous position as an advisor in the Ministry of Agriculture, I was a member of the Strategic Committee, but I'd like to switch that now in my new position as director of SIAT.
Well, we welcome Tbilisi coming on board, and we'd like to have more of those kinds of engagements from other members. So Tbilisi, we've already had some offline discussions, and we'll keep you engaged. That's most welcome. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much to everybody, especially the presenters on the action groups. And just to echo the last point that Mark Manas is mentioning, the action groups is one very important mechanism that the GACSA delivers its work. And we encourage all members, observers to actually participate or join in any one of them that they have interest in and related to the work they do. If you cannot get to the conveners, you can please get information through the facilitation unit. And there you can also then participate within the context of your organizational work. Thank you very much once again to everybody on the action groups. And of course, the discussion doesn't end here. You can engage through the facilitation unit and directly through the conveners. Let me, at this point, invite regional linkages, a very brief sharing on that. This is emanating from the session we had in the last annual forum, where some regional representatives met and had some discussions. And we have continued to interact with them and looking at the synergies and complementarities across the regions all over the world. And Marwan is going to share some developments in that context. Marwan, please go ahead.
Martin, this is Ernie Shea.
Marwan, you'll need to unmute. Can you unmute, Marwan? Okay, Martin, how about we go to Ernie first, and then we can...
Okay, yeah, let's proceed. Let's go to the membership action group. And please go ahead.
Hello, Martin, this is Ernie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just a quick update on the regional activities in North America. The North American Climate Smart Ag Alliance is continuing to evolve, and we've begun to build out a 2017 work plan. And we have also been working to try to come into alignment with some other major partners that I think can also participate in other regional alliances. And on that point, we have been in a conversation with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, their Climate Smart Agriculture work stream, as well as the Business for Social Responsibility unit. And last week in Phoenix, had an opportunity to sit down together and explore how we could actually collaborate. Our main point to our business partners was that we needed to explore ways to come together and have one platform rather than having competing platforms to support climate smart agriculture work at the regional level. They agreed with that. They also embraced and strongly endorsed trying to work through GACSA's regional alliances. And they were particularly supportive of the fact that we are a farmer-first focused alliance. So in North America, we have begun the process of sitting down and constructing a joint work plan with the World Business Council. And I think we're going to have strong emphasis on a couple of items. One is going to be designing a process that we can use in North America to actually establish specific measurable goals for the 3 pillars of CSA in North America. We also are going to be establishing a robust communications platform to disseminate facts, material, information in a way that's going to be well received, we hope, by the farming community and the various CSA stakeholders on the continent. And I would say that the third item that they have embraced and are going to work with us on is recruiting a cadre of farmer leaders in North America who are actually going to become CSA champions. And our intent is to have them participate in conferences across the continent, sharing the vision of climate smart agriculture, talking about the enabling activities are going to be needed, and use those farmer leaders to reinforce that this is truly a bottom-up initiative with our many partners. So to the extent that the other regions have an opportunity to connect with the World Business Council, I think it would be helpful to have a similar dialogue to what we've been having in North America. Over.
Thank you very much, Annie. Additional to that, did you want to say anything related to the membership task team? Hello, Annie?
I'm sorry, Martin, I muted my phone. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm saying that additional to the information you have given us on what you're doing, which is very clear, would you want to say a word on the membership task team?
Yes, I can say a quick word about that. The membership engagement team has recognized that we have to scale back our ambition a little bit because we don't have the same support system we had previously in the facilitation unit. But nevertheless, our top priorities for this year are going to be continue to identify GACSA members that we can spotlight on the website and in our newsletter as kind of a featured partner of the month. So there will be a way to demonstrate action. And we've heard that a couple of times in this call, that GACSA exists because of what our members are about and what they're doing. So we want to feature those partners. We also have recognized that we want to maintain connectivity with our members. So the newsletter that is going out, I see it just came out, I believe, this morning, is another way to connect members, share experiences, celebrate successes, and so forth. So that'll be another priority. And as we go forward, I think we're also sensitive to the fact that we don't want to just be a static organization. We want to grow. So we have our eyes and ears open for potential new members that can come in to GACSA and join with us in advancing our climate smart agriculture work plan. So those would be the primary activities that the membership engagement team has chosen to focus on as we seek additional resources. And I would close maybe with that point, that I think there is a way to tie the membership engagement work with the finance team's work to help raise funding, because when funders see action, when they see the GACSA members doing things, making contributions that are changing practices on the ground, that's what gets them excited. So we're happy to work with the finance team to help secure additional resources so GACSA can grow. Over.
Thank you very much, and that is very, very useful. We're just getting on the 2-hour mark, but I think we still have one more presentation and then we go into another business. So I hope that we can still stay on for another 10-15 minutes or so to conclude on those two elements. So before we go to the last presentation from Marwan, and I hope you are connected now. Is there any comment, question to what Annie has just presented on the experiences in the North American Regional Network and also the membership engagement task team? Comment, questions? I don't hear anyone. Is Marwan on the call? Are you able to speak now? Marwan? I thought Marwan was sitting together with me. Can you hear us?
Yes, Marwan speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Indeed, I'm with Federica and me. so we are on the same line. So I will provide a quick update about the work on regional alliances, the progress achieved so far. The first point I would like to mention is about the participation in key meetings of regional CSA alliances. In that regard, we can mention the participation of GACSA in the Africa CSA Alliance meeting, which was also aiming at supporting coordination between African and sub-regional alliances on CSA. Also a tentative of participation for Central Asia to Tashkent, but unfortunately for unforeseen reasons, we were not able to make it, but it was scheduled. Also, on the communication part, the web pages of GACSA's website have been developed to present the partners and the activities of the various regional alliances. So, and of course, there is this activity that already mentioned for North America CSA Alliance and World Business Council. It's developed it quite well, so I will not insist on that. On the activities to be developed for 2016, I would say that we are all looking for synergies, and Martin, you mentioned that very well. So two suggestions can be made. The first one is the fact of developing regional case studies on these regional CSA alliances, jointly with the action groups, both for investment, knowledge, and enabling environments. The idea would be jointly define the content of these regional case studies on which to advance, as we did last year for the country case studies, showing how we are reaching out from national to regional scale between 2015 and between 2016 and 2017. Also, a suggestion can be made to integrate the representatives of regional alliances in the workshop on metrics, because they are those coordinating countries in developing agricultural investment programs. So that's a suggestion. So basically, with so far $20,000 US, I wish to point out that that's the first time we are ending up with the figure for budget for the regional alliances. So it's not the 50,000 that were initially expected, but that's okay. We're going to work on that. And basically, the work would be to further define the regional case studies jointly with the other action groups, and then develop these studies, develop webinars, and Alison made proposal for having it for free through Cornell University. Thank you for that. And then present the results for the annual forum. So that would be the main type of activities to be done, and of course some communication projects to do external communication between GACSA and the regional CSA Alliance. Thank you very much, Albert.
Just to add to Marwan, that based as well on what Ernie said, which Marwan and the FU fed into, it's to look at how we can engage the private sector at the regional level in a few regions that they had identified themselves as priority targets, and perhaps show something for the annual forum.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you, Marwan, for that intervention. Is there any questions, comments to Marwan on the regional linkages? Okay, if there is nothing, thank you very much, Annie and Marwan. I think you have provided very, very valuable information. Annie, both on your experiences in North American Network, but also your plans for 2017 with regard to membership engagement. And definitely would encourage all the members, observers to get involved or share ideas or opportunities with Annie and the team when you have anything coming up regarding membership engagement. And of course, in the same line, they work on the regional linkages, which is actually proving very, very valuable and useful both to GACSA and also to the regional networks. So having said that, is there anything outstanding in a big way on the action groups and regional networks, I mean regional linkages and task team? If anyone has something major outstanding, can say it now. Otherwise, I would then go to the another business. Okay, in terms of another business, we'll ask if others have got any points. But from the co-chairs, we had two points, and I'll start with that. Then we can go around the participants. The first one from the co-chairs is the dates for the next strategy committee meeting, which some of you have alluded to in your submissions. So our proposal right now, and looking at the time, is that this meeting can charge the facilitation unit to explore dates and the venue for the next strategy committee meeting. This includes whether a physical meeting can be considered and actually delivered. Is that acceptable to all the members?
Ben. Ya terminé.
Estaba coordinando con Roel Lato.
Dame un segundito nada más para terminar
Hello, I think that was not for us. Any comments on the point that we charge the facilitation unit to explore and bring to us a very brief note on possible dates, venue, and also whether or not we can do a physical strategy committee meeting in terms of the next meeting?
Hi, Martin, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, I would just add further that based on the discussions, I would even further venture to say that we should look at the time frame of the spring, given that the plans for the workshop on metrics and the fact that there was a need expressed for the annual forums that seem to meet physically. So I think that if we could task the SE to explore with the action groups when would be the best date to plan a physical meeting in the spring.
Thank you, May. So we will take it that the facilitation unit would explore that and in the coming weeks bring back that information for a decision. And I do note also that the annual forum task team did mention looking for an opportunity to meet physically, so that in the consultation they can also intervene to see if this would be the opportunity and if it would work for them. Thank you very much. The last ALB from the co-chairs is just to mention that we have one or two of our very active members that are changing work in terms of also responsibilities at workstation. I did mention David Hallett at the FIT, who's moved into other responsibilities within the FIT. And Mariaka is also moving work and has informed us this in the last week. So this is just to say thank you very much to them, and we hope that yes, even as they move, we'll continue and we would use every opportunity that we can interact and also acknowledge the major works that both of them have done in supporting and collaborating on advancing GACSA and the CSA in Africa, I mean globally. Thank you very much to both of you, David Hallett and Mariaka, for the work that you've been doing in GACSA on the operational side as well. So having said that, let me ask, and we probably would not take around as such, since we can see each other. But if you have any point you'd like to raise regarding on any other business, please do it now. Over.
Hi, Martin. This is me from Rome. I just would like to acknowledge Marieke Langeveld. I don't know if she's still on the call from the Netherlands, but given that it's her last strategic committee call and meeting with us, and even GACSA meeting as she's moving on, I just wanted to acknowledge all her contribution and support, including personal collegiality, and wish her well in her next adventure. So thank you very much, Marieke, from all of us in GACSA.
Thank you, me. Another point on another business?
Yeah, this is Kyle. When did you want the proposal for the spring meeting? Because spring is in less than a month now. So just is it a 2-week thing? Is it just so we have a definitive date when we can hand back that proposal over?
Kyle, I think that it's up to you to the FU to be in touch with the action groups to see what is feasible in terms of when they could be ready to have a workshop, and as well availability of rooms depending on the location. If it's in the south, we can look at whatever makes sense in their schedule and availability of rooms. And maybe as well, given that the deadline for the location of the annual forum should be end of March, something around that time.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, let me thank everybody for participating in this call, especially also the presenters for the input provided. I would also like, on behalf of everybody, to thank Garrison for facilitating the webinar facilities or service that has made us actually interact and share quite well as compared to probably how we've done it with the desk teleconferencing. So this is very well appreciated in that support offered. And with that note, again, thank you to everybody, and looking forward to the next call. And also just to say that there is a lot of information being shared from the facilitation unit. Please take an opportunity when and if it relates to you to respond and also interact with the facilitation unit on that. The minutes of the meeting will be shared, and I think there's a recording on the minutes which will also be shared.
Martin, hold on 1 second. I just received an email from Marieke, and she wanted me to just say that there will be a conference that the Netherlands is organizing with Vietnam on May 22nd and 23rd of, March 22nd and March 23rd on climate smart agriculture, and wanted the strategic committee to be aware of that. Over.
Thank you very much, Carl. I suppose you can include that also in the events calendar, that even those that are not on the call can have access to that information. So once again, thank you very much to everybody, and wishing you a good day or good night, those in the late part of the day.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Martin. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.